All right, everyone, and welcome back for episode 2 of Hyperion. And this mission starts. The title is From Nothing, and we see the Hyperion traveling quickly at subluminal speeds using her new QSD. And for the opening, we have a captain's log from Captain Nix.
Alrighty. Captain's log started 56550.19. The crew has been busy in the 3 weeks following the Srivani situation. Most are still somewhat shaken after being experimented on by an alien species that seems to lack really any empathy or self awareness. The Srivani survivors of the deflector attack are still in the brig, as we really haven't found a good planet to drop them off on. I'm still somewhat concerned about Commander Ash's mental state, though the counselor assures me that there's nothing to worry about. In other news, Telek and his team have repaired all the breaches and enabled the Hyperion to test out QSD. We've already had 5 successful QSD hops of about 300 light years each. Though each hop was only sustained for an hour, as per Starfleet guidelines, it has enabled us to actually get to the exploration side of our mission quite rapidly. Particularly, we are headed towards a Class N planet that was picked up on our long range sensors and log.
All right, for our first scene today, we're going to jump to the Hyperion mess. And this is just before the start of first shift, so it's still early in the morning. And Lieutenant Allen, you walk in the mess hall, you see everyone there eating their breakfast, and seated off in the corner is Commander Telek. And Commander Telek, you have your breakfast, and then you're also surrounded by all sorts of pads and reports about the current status of engineering, particularly all the information about the repairs you did, how the QSD is operating, and all of that. So I'll leave it to you guys.
So I think Lieutenant Allen approaches the table where Commander Telek is and finds the only clear spot to put down his tray, and just looks at all the data pads and says, "Commander, I don't know how you do it. I've just started my command and I'm exhausted. Duty rosters, assignments, training. There's so much paperwork. I don't. How do you do it?"
Most of the time, just one form at a time. Despite how it looks, there is an order to all of this chaos. Um,
I'll take your word for it.
there's a little bit more on my plate than usual due to the testing of the QSD drive, but I mean, it seems to be going well so far, so I'm pretty okay with that.
So here's something interesting. I have to come up with a strategy for enemy borders on our doctor's quarters, underwater invaders. That's something I haven't even thought about. This is a really strange mission, and I think we're gonna find a lot of cool things out here. But right now, I am just exhausted, and this is just the start of the day.
Well, I would say we signed up for a little bit of excitement, so we can't be too mad at it.
Nah, you're right.
But if you do come up with that uh underwater invasion plan, let me see it. That sounds interesting.
I will. Uh, I'm gonna have to put every member of the crew through the training, anyways.
Yeah, I'm pretty interested in seeing some people trying to swim around on the underwater deck. It's nothing that I've really seen before.
Yeah, you'd think
You're
zero G training would prepare you for it. It's
No, it's
it's
completely
not the
different.
same. And even with the suit on, the water just gets everywhere. It's strange.
It's a unique setup to be sure, but don't know. It's nice to know that we are on the cutting edge of pretty much everything.
So how confident are you in this quantum slip drive that we're using?
Well, for safety purposes, we're trying to only use it in short bursts, but we should be able to get some distance into our mission pretty quickly thanks to it.
It and Lieutenant Allen looks out the window, and it doesn't look the same as when it's warp drive. And he says, everything about this mission is just different.
Have you been on a mission like this before?
No, this is my first time being on any sort of long term mission.
You're gonna definitely see some interesting things. So, even on our ship, things are different, but it's gonna be way different outside as well. Once we get out
Yeah,
into the wilderness, basically.
yeah, I can't say I've ever come across a species of aliens that hid on our ship and experimented on us. So that's one. I'll put that in the book. I'm sure by the end of the mission, I'll have hundreds of new experiences to tell my parents about.
I mean, in the meantime, you could always send a couple of video postcards back, just telling them of all of the interesting things that we see.
Yeah, that's a pretty good idea. And then Alan looks at his he has one little data pad and he looks at it and then he immediately stands up from the table. Oh, zero G combat training. I completely forgot about it. Commander, I'll see you later. And you notice he hasn't touched
But
his food.
Telek will
And
just off and go back to looking at his various pads and data.
And with the end of that exchange, we're actually going to transition to the next scene, which is the council, the office of the counselor on this ship. And I believe, Captain Nix, you said that you were going to see this person. And as the door opens, you've already chimed in, he's already let you in. You see before you are Rigelian Chelon. And the Rigelian Chelons are basically, well, they're turtles, essentially. Another of the Rigelian species. His name is Lieutenant Hev Normax, but just Lieutenant Max for short. He's on the shorter side, much shorter than you, in fact, Nix. He's probably a little over 1.5 meters. His uniform has been modified so that it fits on his shell, because Chelons have full shells. And as the door opens, he motions in. Hello, Captain. Please come in.
Thank you. And of course, I slither on in and take a look around. I like what you've done the place, merging your personal quarters with office space. Very relaxing atmosphere.
And you notice, Nix, as you move in, he's got it at a very balmy temperature here. It's very humid. It might have been designed for him, but it's probably especially very comfortable for you.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely taking advantage of the ability to have multiple climate zones in different rooms of the ship.
And yeah, I think I'm gonna go for this chair over here. And as I sort of sit down, I wait for him to do the same, and then I sort of ask, "So, how's my first officer doing? Anything I should be concerned about?"
And before that, Lieutenant Max walks
Yes.
to the replicator, and he says to the replicator, he starts to put an order, and he stops. Captain, would you like a cinnamon chew stick?
Can't say I'm familiar with it. What is the cinnamon you speak of? I don't think I've ever tried it.
It's a root back from my homeworld. I think you might enjoy it.
Sure, why not?
And as he puts the order in, by the way, cinnamon was picked up by the universal translator, so it's not actually cinnamon, it's something else. But as
Okay.
he takes the plate and he puts it down between the two of you, you get a smell of something that smells very earthy, very spicy. But he instantly takes one of the sticks and starts chewing on it out of the side of his mouth.
I sort of follow the same mannerisms, and I maybe not like going at it with gusto, but polite chewing.
It tastes sort of like dirt.
Well, I do my best to hide that fact.
With that, Max, he goes to his chair, and it's a modified chair because with his shell and then his tail, he can't exactly sit on a chair like we have, but he sort of sits back on it. Now, Captain, about your question, of course, you know I can't give you any details about the commander. I would have, of course, alert you if there was anything to be alarmed about as far as the commander performing their duties.
As I expect, though, as captain, it is prudent of me to at least do somewhat due diligence when it comes to the well-being, especially of my first officer.
Indeed, but something tells me you didn't come all the way down here just to read a report.
No, I wanted to get your thoughts on how to deal with our guests. Well, our guest, I suppose, as it were. I am hesitant to say that it feels like when we essentially strand this person, unless we drop them off on a space station or otherwise, we will literally be doing that, stranding them.
Indeed, I have met with many other members of the crew, particularly the crew in the aquatic deck were quite disturbed by the experience and what happened to them. It is apparently quite out of the range of their experiences. But before we get started to discuss what you mentioned, Captain, a bit of an icebreaker, if you will. Why do you think you are a captain? Why are you here?
Well, if you were to ask my mother, I'm sure she would say that I failed in my duties as a engineer. Uh, it's a bit of humor, if you will. As you may or may not know, my species puts a high value on the sciences and the engineering. To be a commander, to be in a red uniform over, say, a yellow or a blue, it's actually a step down for people like me. Um, but I think it's necessary. I think that what is the human expression? No one else would do the job, so I reluctantly stepped up to do it.
But do you want to be here?
Of course, I do. I want to be on the forefront of exploration and discoveries. But sometimes I wonder if I would have been better served staying in gold.
And why is that?
Well, I mean, let's take the recent situation, for example. I was able to spot the phase cloak pretty much ahead of everyone else. And not to toot my own horn, as the humans say, but I feel like well, put it bluntly, had Ash not used the deflector in such a manner, I might have been able to find a way to prevent the needless loss of life. But maybe that says more about my wish of what happens than what could have actually happened.
Indeed. Based on what I've read about that situation, it doesn't seem as though there were an abundance of choices before you.
And that's sort of what I was expecting when I first took the command exam. I knew there would be hard choices to make, but it doesn't get easier. Uh, it's one of those things where I'm constantly sort of asking myself, is this what a good captain would do? But I think that's healthy.
Think if you stop asking yourself that question, then there's a problem. But as far as the guests that we have on board, what do you think about them?
I'm of two minds. Obviously, I recognize their rights as a sentient, intelligent, living creature. But at the same time, it appears that that does not apply to us. We were mere experiment fodder for them. And they turned down every single offer of peace, of goodwill, of anything but violence. And the moment we had to escalate to violence, they decided to basically chastise me as if what I was doing was some gross violation of their rights. And I, I don't really know too much about this species, all things considered. But if there's more species like this out here in the Delta Quadrant, I sort of worry what sort of people we might have to become.
It reminds me of old Earth. They used to experiment on domestic animals for medical research, for their greater good. Animals were rats, I believe they're called. Usually for a reason to cure some malady here or there. But you have to ask yourself, was that immoral? It had good intentions. In this case, we were the rats.
I see your point, but at some level, I do have to question whether or not those rats were truly self aware in a way that we were. And I suppose that's a bit hypocritical, but I feel as if the moment you sort of skirt the line of actual intelligence, of actual sapience, and you use someone or something like that as an experimental subject, you violated what it is to be a doctor. Though I'm not really qualified to speak on such matters.
That's interesting because that is a morality construct that we have, but obviously they have a different set of constructs. Who's to say which morality is better than others?
Well, as you may well know better than I'm sure most of the crew would rather they adopted ours.
Indeed. Oh, for that matter, who judges morality? Who can say which of us is correct in this situation? We did kill
Sure.
most of their crew.
Which I have a sneaking suspicion will come back to bite us at some point, but what's done is done.
And I'm curious of your opinion, Captain. Why do you think we are out here? Why did Starfleet not just send a probe?
Well, for one, a probe would have easily burned out on power before it even made the jump to QSD. But they sent us out here because, we're explorers first and foremost. We're not a military force, as much as some people would like us to be after the Dominion War. We are meant to seek out the unknown. And you can't really accomplish that with a probe. I mean, yes, you could send a probe to a system and get scans, but to actually be there, to actually look out from the view screen or look out onto a planet on your own 2 feet, metaphorically, of course, it's something that is core to Starfleet's values. And I guess on some level, I expect that we're out here to also sort of recoup or otherwise fix the reputation that Voyager may have left in the mouth of some of the species out here.
The I've been thinking on this quite a bit lately on the place of the Prime Directive in the Delta Quadrant. Of course, Admiral Janeway and her crew had a difficult situation to overcome, but the Prime Directive clearly states that a ship and its crew are expendable before the Prime Directive should be violated. At what point is our presence going to alter this entire quadrant? By just being here, we will send ripples of change.
I feel as if that would be a good philosophical debate. I mean, what is it the humans call it? A butterfly effect, where one small change cascades into a larger one. Who's to say? I mean, I'm sure people looking back at this moment in history will know, but us in the moment, I don't think there's a good answer to that.
There's a quote from a famous Earth poet that I quite find myself returning to frequently. The quote is, "The question is not what you look at, but what you see."
It's an interesting quote.
Our guests, my first glance, I see them as quite uncaring, quite dispassionate, arrogant. But maybe there's more. Perhaps I shouldn't judge them quite so harshly. We'd have to decide at some point if we should treat them better than they treated us, or if we should give in to what we feel is right. Sometimes those things don't quite equal. It's a decision that, unfortunately, Captain, you will be the one to make.
Well, I'm certainly going to have to think about it longer. As far as I know, there's not really a place we could even get rid of them, even if we wanted to.
And Max, he turns his head slowly. He's still chewing on the end of his cinnamon stick, and he looks to the window, and you can see outside the window, you don't see any stars. There's no black at all. It's just the flashing blue of the QSD. And he says, I'm not sure I will. It will take me some time to grow accustomed to not seeing stars.
Well, they're still there. We just can't see them.
There's probably a higher point of clarity in that comment, Captain. They're there, but we still can't see them. It makes me wonder if the Srivani had experimented on us in a way that did not affect us if it had been such a violation. Or if we would not have noticed, if we wouldn't have cared.
And I sort of nibble on the quote-unquote cinnamon stick and eventually sort of make to rise, and I say, well, Max, this has been a illuminating conversation. One last thing before I go. Is it true that in your personal report or your personnel report that you play a Rigelian instrument similar to a human guitar?
He rises slowly because the way he has to get up is he kind of has to push up with his arms, and then his legs finally catch the ground and he stands up. Indeed, Captain. The instrument is called the Rigelian banjo. I can't say after 50 or so years of playing it that I've gathered much proficiency, but it's something I quite enjoy.
Well, the reason I ask is because a certain ensign down on deck 12 has got me a little bit hooked on old Earth music. Are you familiar at all with the artist known as Bonnie Taylor?
I can't say that I've ever heard of that creature before. An Earth musician, you say?
Mm-hmm.
And
I'd like to flavor it that as we end the scene, Captain Nix actually begins singing, maybe Holding Out for a Hero or another Bonnie Taylor song.
Nice. I love it.
But yeah.
And then so our next scene, we're going to transition to the bridge because this is the start of Alpha Shift. And as you guys make your way onto the bridge, all of you go to take your stations. And Captain, as you enter, Lieutenant Commander Idara stands up. She's an Frisian. She's got the typical lean body, 3-armed build, and she stands up. She's got a pad in her hand as you walk in, Captain. She nods to you, Ash, as you take your station, and she hands the pad to you. And you can see on the view screen that the blue is starting to fade, and there's a flash, and you guys drop back to normal space. She hands you the pad and steps inside, and she says, Captain, I think that's successful QSD number 6. Nothing remarkable to report.
Thank you, Lieutenant Commander. How was that incident down on Deck 5 handled?
I'd say with minimal problems. I think the ensign might have had a little too much to drink, which is not a good start to the morning.
Yes, I'm a little bit concerned on where he got his hands on that much liquor. I'll look into it. Thank you, Lieutenant Commander. You may return to your post, or if this is the end of your duty shift, feel free to turn in early.
I thank you, Captain. It'd be nice to take a break. I've had my hands full.
And I sort of give a half smile as if I'm not quite sure if that's a joke, but
she kind of paused to wait to see if she got a reaction. And then she turns to leave the bridge. Telek, I'm actually going to put you on the bridge also. Because with the QSD being deactivated, there's really not much remarkable going on in ship operations. But you guys have exited just outside the system that you've discovered. There's only one planetary body here. It's that Class N planet that Nix mentioned earlier. But I believe, Ash, you said that you wanted to talk to the captain at some point.
Yes, I don't imagine that this would actually be an appropriate time to do so, considering we're all on the bridge. So we'll forgo that scene.
Okay. Ash, as you're entering the system, could you give me a reason science, difficulty 0, and this ship can assist with a sensor science. And you do have a focus. A very good roll. Someone could get the ship.
Does someone have the ship? I guess I just volunteered. All right, sensor science. 4 successes.
Very nice. And I believe that caps you guys at momentum. But Ash immediately...
Lovecraft, do you want to track it or should I?
Why don't you take that, if you're all right with it?
Sure.
But Ash, you pick up a few things on your screen right away. And first of all, the Class N planet is still there. Nothing surprising. There is actually it's a Class 4 ion storm in the system, and you're actually picking up a ship in the center of that ion storm. And they have sent out a distress call, but it's mostly distorted.
Captain, I'm reading heavy ionic activity inside the system, and there appears to be a ship that's caught inside the wake of the ion storm. They're broadcasting a general distress call.
Are we able
to intercept?
Sorry. Are we able to pipe it through the universal translator? Could you put it over the speakers?
May I attempt to do that? Can I filter it through if there's some kind of interference?
Yeah, you managed to get it on the speakers, and what you hear is some static, actually mostly static. You hear some loud sounds in the background. You hear Melon vessel Brakavi, distress call, ion storm, shields failing.
Out of character. Of course, I'm furiously looking this up on Memory Alpha. The Malon, remind me who they were.
Yeah, the Melon were the guys that did the they were kind of like the trash haulers. They had the ships that had the 4 like big round pods on the bottom. They were the ones that they didn't have
the Void episode.
Yeah, they didn't have a good way to dispose of antimatter, so they just dumped it in space. Those guys.
Okay. I guess my follow-up question, and we might have to spend momentum to get this answer. How big is their ship?
If you give me a momentum, I'll give you details on the ship.
I would normally be okay with that, but I have a question. Ash is doubling as our science officer, correct?
Officially, I am the science officer, so I have the science officer talent rather than the first officer, but I am technically also first officer of the ship, as I understand it.
Well, the reason I ask is because if you do have the the science officer role, you do get the free question.
Exactly. So I would pose that question to you then, GM.
It's a scale 4 vessel. You can tell it's a Malon freighter. It's mostly empty, like for cargo. It's not. It actually would have a very small crew complement. It's really designed to haul freight or other supplies. From what you can tell, there's a crew complement of around 30-ish, and the last bit of information I'll give you is they are broadcasting correctly. Their shields are going down because they are in the heart of the ion storm, which is the worst place to be.
And with respect to the information that you already gave us, just a point of clarification, when you say that the ship doesn't appear to be carrying anything, they're not actively reading any radiation signatures on the ship that would indicate that they're carrying essentially antimatter waste, or would that be part of and we would need to spend another momentum to get that information?
Give me another momentum because I have a lot more to follow up with that.
Okay. I guess maybe as part of that, I'm just asking about the radiation signature. My real question in light of that would be, is there any danger of a catastrophic or not necessarily unexpected, but unusual or unorthodox interaction between the kind of radiation that they're producing or that they're dumping and the ion storm itself?
It doesn't look like they're carrying any kind of antimatter or anything that they're dumping into space. Their ship could probably do that, but that's not what they're carrying. What your sensors pick up is they're carrying like lots of garbage. You also know, Nyx in particular, that the Malon, in addition to doing like the garbage hauling for antimatter, are renowned for being salvage experts or just going and salvaging stuff. And that's probably what this ship is. It's probably a salvage vessel. But you don't detect any kind of antimatter that's going to be in danger, apart from the antimatter that's used to drive the ship itself. And as far as radiation, I mean, the ion storm is covering any kind of radiation concerns you might have. It's a class 4 ion storm, and that's a very dangerous one. If your shields would go down on that ship, or like your ship, for example, it would be lethal to everyone on board very quickly.
I guess I'm gonna sort of turn. Obviously, after Ash says all this, I think I'm gonna turn to Talek and ask, Mr. Talek, do you believe we could swoop in and perhaps extend our shield over their vessel without any really worry for us?
I think it might be difficult, but if we are careful about it, we can definitely do that.
Uh, Tell me, Commander Ash, second sort of option. Do you think you could potentially get us in close enough to snag it with a tractor beam?
Well, Captain, I think that Lieutenant Allen might be able to remodulate the shields based on the ionic frequency of the, well, distortion. And it could protect us long enough to, well, yoke the vessel into a tractor beam. Although you and Commander Telek would actually have to make the necessary modifications to the tractor beam emitters to ensure that they're, I suppose, robust enough to actually hold out.
Well, the way I see it. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
There's some information that you would know about ion storms in particular, especially with that focus that you've got on power systems. Could you give me a reason engineering difficulty 1?
Sure thing. And since you said I have an applicable focus, I'm just gonna roll it like that.
Oh, there you go. 2 momentum. Entering an ion storm of this magnitude, the difficulty that's going to present for the ship and for the Malon ship that's currently in it is it's going to be draining your power pretty much constantly. You can keep the shields up. The shields will pretty much block all the bad stuff, and you know that a tractor beam will be difficult to keep locked on just because of all of the nastiness coming off of this ion storm. But you know you're going to have a constant power drain the moment you enter that ion storm.
Captain, the only problem I see with us going into there and using a tractor beam to take them out is that the ion storm is obviously going to affect our power and it's going to drain it rather quickly. So we might have an issue there when it comes to retrieving them. If that's something that you would like to do, I can certainly see how much power I can give us, but we'll have to get this all done pretty quickly.
Well,
And
here's the thought. Oh, go ahead.
I would say at that, Ash would swivel in her chair and she would look at Commander Telek, and you would notice as you look back at her that her eyes look just ever so slightly bruised. There's been what appears to be a careful attempt at concealing it, but she's looking a little bit haggard. And she would say, well, isn't there any way that you could actually shield the power systems? You must be able to come up with something that would actually prevent us from experiencing such an extensive or at least rapid drain in power. And what I'm suggesting there is there a way that we could spend that one floating momentum that we had there from the previous task and one more, possibly to create an advantage so that we will lose less power or lose power less quickly?
Yeah, I think if you guys create an advantage, that'll come up in the next stage of this encounter. Yeah, but you could do that.
Done.
I think that's a great idea, Commander.
Thank you, Commander. If I needed your opinion about my command decisions, I would ask for it. And she will turn back to her console.
Nyx does one of those motions where she's thinking about saying something in the moment, but obviously the current situation is a bit more critical than reminding officers not to bicker on her bridge. So Nyx actually calls up on her sort of center chair console. Um, I always like, as you may well know me at this point, I always like having a plan C when we go into these things. Um, and this is probably going to require a roll, but um, the way I see it is space maintains momentum. Like you don't just slow down once something, gets you going. So my question would be if the metaphorical stuff hits the fan, um, what would be the uh, how to put this? Basically, what I'm thinking of doing is getting us in close, getting us momentarily locked on a tractor beam, and then almost doing a Picard or a Riker maneuver where we do a momentary warp jump just to get it going fast enough that it'll go out of the ion storm.
So why don't I move us to this point, to this map where you can actually see the position of the Hyperion and how it's relative to this vessel, the Brakavi. So the Brakavi is right in the middle of the ion storm, and I have you guys actually at extreme range.
I'm guessing each of these squares is what's the ratio on these? Oh, I see. We have bottom right. Let's see. The storm would extend to about there, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Okay.
And as soon as you enter that like diameter or that radius that you drew for 5 squares, you guys will start feeling the effects of the ion storm.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're going to proceed with the initial tractor beam plan. If that fails, we'll try shields. And if that fails, we'll try the momentary warp jump just to get them going out of the storm.
Well, at this point, we're going to go... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the one thing that we obviously would do before any of this happens is I would say to open a channel and inform our new guests that we are coming to their aid.
Ash, as you open that channel and relay the captain's message, you don't exactly get a reply. You get someone saying, "Oh, please help," and there's jarble and static, and you can't really get out a clear sentence more than just "please help." But it tracks with the interference they're probably getting from the ion storm. They may not even be able to hear you.
Well, Captain, I've relayed your message, but I'm really afraid that they may not have received us given all the ionic interference.
Well, the quicker we get them out of there, the better. Helm, take us in.
So at this point, we're going to switch to structured combat, even though you're not in combat, because each round does matter. Things will happen. So we're going to go to you guys first. So who would like to act first? Torpedoes, that makes sense.
I wonder if when we approach the phenomenon, I might be able to use the sensor array to plot some kind of course through it that will essentially, I mean, are there any pockets inside the ionic storm that are less dense or that would be safer to travel through? Basically, maybe creating an advantage using science to make it easier to navigate or make us navigate through it faster.
Ironically, I think this is one of those rare instances where we can actually use the rules for charting a hazard.
And your hot rod talent, it's almost like somebody planned this.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, not being smart about it. Yeah, this is actually the sort of thing that the Hyperion was designed to do well. You not only have sensors that can allow you to chart very easily, you do have the hot rod talent, which is designed to take you into places like this. So while it would be very tricky for any other ship, for you guys, this is not quite as risky. But about your idea, Ash, yeah, you could certainly try to create an advantage that would do something on, because there will be a helm task to navigate this thing that can make that easier, perhaps.
Okay.
I believe that would probably be science and daring. I think create an advantage is difficulty of 2.
And subspace dynamics or quantum mechanics, sensor operations.
Yeah, sensor operations for sure.
Then difficulty of 3, you said?
A 2.
Okay, then I'll buy an extra die.
Okay.
And let's say Hyperion can assist
Nice.
you with a sensors con.
Okay. Survey says we actually get all that momentum right back.
3 momentum. So the second advantage that you've managed to create is you think you have a pretty clear path to get to the Brokavi.
All right, I would turn over to, is it Ensign Harlock? Or
I
Senior
believe
Chief
so,
Harlock?
yes.
Senior Chief Harlock.
Yeah, he's senior chief.
Con, I'm uploading a series of sensor waypoints that should allow you to navigate the field more easily.
And then, of course, Harlock sort of looks at his console, tilts his head to the side a little bit, and says, no offense, Commander, but you're talking about redlining the engine here. Are you sure?
I don't want to spend a second longer in that field than we have to, but Captain's discretion, and she would turn back to Captain Nix.
And once again, we have ELH talking to himself. Harlock looks back and says, Captain. And Nix sort of nods and says, I'm in agreement. The longer we're in there, the more we risk problems, not only to ourselves, but our rescuees. Let's get this done quickly.
And in the next turn, which will be the turn of chaos, what you pick up to Lek is the Brokavi's power levels have dropped 50%. And then we'll move back to you guys.
So I do have a question. The way this is unfolding, are we actually sort of keeping track of what stations have gone, or can we double up, like move twice or do a tactical action twice?
I'm treating it exactly like combat, so each person will have one action, and then just like normal combat, and then we'll go back and forth between you guys doing something and then me basically doing something to the Brokavi.
Okay.
So I would treat this just like normal combat. Yes, like Ash has already gone this round. That sort of thing.
Well, Talek and I still need to get those tractor beams ready, so let's work on that as we're traveling from point A to point B.
That's actually exactly what I was going to say. I wanted to get the tractor beam ready.
Do you guys want to have the helm move, or is that something that Talek and Nix are going to work on now?
I'm looking at my score actually. I think if I take the lead on this one, Talek, even though my scores are a little bit, not as great as yours, I can spend 2 momentum to do the swift task and then do the helm action myself.
Okay. Yeah, that'll work.
And jumping back to the bridge, I think we're going to have one of those moments where Nix, you kind of walk over to Talek's station and lean over, and you guys are working on the problem together. So talk to me about how you're going to modify this tractor beam, and that'll dictate what this roll is.
Well, first we're going to reverse the polarity of the Nadion field emitter, and then we're going to reroute it through the primary Gestalt juncture, and we will essentially do what Jordy did with the stellar fragment, where it's very high intensity force, like 400% force, but very short bursts, so it doesn't overload the emitter.
Is the intention to pull the ship with you, like a normal tractor beam, or are you trying to push the ship away outside of the storm?
Let me ask you this. Would it be the same distance to pull them out, or would it be better to push, is it better to push them out of the way or pull them out of the way?
Probably it's better to take them with you because their engines are out for one, so they can't really make any navigational changes. And the ion storm does have a bit of a magnetic field, so you could try to send them in a direction and then they could get pulled back in.
Gotcha. Then yeah, we're definitely pulling.
So I think you two, Nix and Talek, I believe this will probably be a science and daring. Let's go for the marbles and say difficulty 4.
Let me ask you this, Talek. What is your con like?
Not that great.
Like, are we talking a 2, a 1?
A 1.
Okay. Because the problem here is that my science is a 1, and I imagine your science is much higher than mine. But my
Yeah, my
con is a
science is a
3.
3. My science is fine.
You could spend 2 to keep the initiative and then have Harlock do the helm task. Or
This is
you,
true.
yeah.
You know what? I like that. Let's why don't we say that Telek, I'm assisting you on this one, and then we'll spend the 2 momentum for Harlock to go.
That sounds like a great plan.
I think it's a science daring for both of you, and I believe you both have a focus. And if somebody could get the ship, I think it's with the ship going to be maybe a science structure.
Okay, I've got that.
I don't think I've ever used those two in combination before.
It's good to try new things.
Mm-hmm.
Except when your structure's an 8. Then it's a terrible thing to try new things, but you know.
Oh, that's our worst stat. Huh.
Yes, it is.
Oh,
We'll
don't
try
worry.
our best.
You're gonna see my daring science in a moment. You're gonna be like, oh, good lord.
Thought modulating the deflector would have been engineering.
So that is 5 successes, which means we have 1 floating momentum by my count.
Well, we'll spend that on the keeping the momentum.
Well, actually, here's my thought. Why don't we spend the 1 floating and 1 momentum to create the advantage that when we actually attempt the tractor beam task, that it will be 1 difficulty lower because we have prepared it ahead of time.
I like it.
Okay.
See, that's why you're the captain. You think ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And we see a montage of Telek at his computer terminal, calling up lots of displays on the tractor beam and making like quick modifications. In fact, Telek's fingers are a blur as all these things are changing. And occasionally, Nick, you'd lean in and you'd say, "Oh, no, let's do it this way," or "No, that way." And then after a few moments pass, as the two of you working together, Telek, you have a nice sine wave or something that shows up on your display saying that you have a pretty solid way of connecting the tractor beam to this vessel, even despite the ion storm.
I think this will work.
It'll have to, otherwise we're going to run out of options very quickly. Helm, take us in, and we'll spend the. Well, let me ask this: does anybody have quick to action?
Yep, I do.
Ah, well then we don't have to pay the momentum. All right. So let's see. I'm trying to remind myself all the different helm actions because I think medium range is free, but long and extreme are different.
If you're talking about warp, there is the helm check. Actually, I don't even know if there's a helm check for warp.
There is. I just got to find it.
And then it's just the power requirement to be however many zones you want. I think maneuver only goes up to medium range, yeah, and then impulse goes to long range.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I think it's just power. It says power requirement equal to the number of zones to be moved. Doesn't have a check.
Right. Well, it
No,
does.
they're
If you look
all
up,
0. Yeah, they're all 0.
yeah, they're all 0.
Which there will be a
Trying to
check at
think.
this point because you are navigating into the ion storm, and you guys actually have an advantage for that. But we'll deal with that in a second.
So if I read this correctly, we are close, medium, long. They're at extreme, so we would have to spend 3 power to get there.
Yep.
And we also have the improved warp drive talent, so that could spare us some power.
Yeah, I say let's try it. So
Telek, I think you should roll that. I think it's 1 challenge dice.
Per power spent. So if we spend 3 power, we roll 3 challenge dice. At least that's how I read it.
That sounds right. And then I believe in effect will save you from having to spend that power.
Yep.
Yeah, but Telek, if you want to roll those 3 challenge dice, I'll say for Harlock, the difficulty here is going to be a helm daring. It would be a difficulty 3, But Harlock, as you're
Cool,
getting ready
Bonnie
to
was giving me a second.
plot the course, you get a read over from Ash, who passed you the system that she was able to plot or to navigate through the Ion Storm, and you can see that this is actually much easier with the assistance of Commander Ash. It seems as though she's done a lot of the hard work for you. She's got you a very clear, like, go here, then here, and you navigate the worst parts of the Ion Storm. So with Ash's advantage, your difficulty is only 3.
Only a 3.
It's
Okay.
a con daring. Actually, the complication range will be increased by 1. It would have been increased by 2, but you guys have the Hot Rod talent, which I believe stops one of those.
Yep. All right, let's see. The ship's assisting with engines con still, correct?
Yep, engine's con.
All right, then I will spend 1 momentum to do 3 die, and since this is an activation for Harlock, I'm going to give him the cautious con talent. All right, let's see what happens. Well, we're definitely going to reroll that complication.
If you fail, what will happen is you'll just be out of position.
Okay, so we got rid of the complication, and we got the 3 successes we need with the Hyperion's help.
And I think that's still going to cost you 3 power because Telek didn't get any effects there.
Correct.
Yeah, so tell me where you'd like to be.
Well, since we have to be at close range to use a tractor beam, I would like to put us maybe there.
Sounds good. On the screen on the bridge, you guys see it's a flash. It's not even a second. And then you are right in the middle of this Ion Storm. So there's flashes of blue and white and electricity just streaking across the main view screen. And actually, I need somebody to roll the Hyperion structure engineering versus a difficulty of, difficulty of 4. Check to see what your advantages were. I've got them written down. You guys can spend extra dice, but this is only the Hyperion rolling.
I don't know,
None
Bradley,
feels confident.
you've been left out a little bit here. Maybe you want to do that roll?
Okay.
The structure engineering, like I said, you can...
I've been reading the rule book the whole time for ideas, so that's why I've been so quiet. You said structures engineering?
Yeah, structure engineering difficulty of 4, and like I said, you can buy extra dice for this roll if you would like.
I'd honestly say take 3 momentum and roll 4 dice.
I was gonna say the same thing. I'll do that. Oops, I don't think I did that correctly, did I? No. So
You just
3
need
more
3
dice.
more. Yep, 3 more.
Well, maybe I'll just do them all one at a
Do it
time.
one at a time. It's a good start.
It's not letting me actually pick through the sheet. So
Yeah, I think what it is when you set the sheet to be a starship, is it automatically assumes you're just doing 1 die.
So it looks like you guys have 1 failure and 1 complication. Okay. So your advantage here comes immediately into play just as you drop out of warp, and like I said, the lightning is just streaking across the view screen. Some sparks fly off of someone's console. Actually, I'm going to say because there's a complication, I'm going to spin that in a second. But the whole ship rocks, the lights kind of dim for a moment. And let's see, since you guys missed the difficulty by 1, you are going to lose 2 power. So lights dim for just a second. And this complication, I'm going to roll a challenge dice. If I get an effect, that means one of your consoles explode. Because this is Star Trek.
Question, would this actually count as a structure breach?
Not exactly.
Okay.
it's like a feedback from the storm.
So nothing else happens. But yeah, some sparks fly off of some sort of thing in the ceiling. No rocks or anything, but the whole ship shakes violently, and your consoles kind of winks for a second. The lights dim and come back on, but the whole ship is violently shaking under the effects of the Ion Storm. But to like what we've just experienced is that power drain I was talking about. This is going to be a constantly reoccurring thing while you guys are in the Iron Storm, and actually it's affecting the Brakavi too. And it's at that moment where the Brakavi loses power and her shields go down. But back to you guys.
I think at this point we engage the tractor beam, and then depending on if we get momentum, we may want to spend to let Harlock go again. Actually, we would let me go because then I would direct Harlock, is how that would work out. Yeah, let's do that. Let's get the tractor beam going. I think that
Okay.
falls to our tactical officer.
Now I have I thought the tractor beam cost us power, but I'm looking at the book and it doesn't say anything about power requirement for the tractor beam. Has that been changed or anything?
No, I don't see a power cost either.
Nope. Yeah,
Okay.
that's funny. Okay, yeah. The rules don't say it, so we won't do it.
I don't think any of my focuses apply shipboard tactical systems. You could maybe say that tractor beam is used for tactical systems, but
It's a
maybe that
difficulty of
feels
it's a difficulty of 2, and you guys have the advantage for your tractor beam being awesome. However, I'm going to be a little ruthless here as the GM and make a complication that cancels your advantage. And Alan, as you start to lock on the tractor beam, you notice that the Barkavi's shields are down, and it looks like her hull is starting to lose integrity, which is going to make your tractor beam task even more difficult, because if you do this wrong, you could tear the ship in half.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to keep your difficulty at 2.
Okay. So I say to the captain, Captain, the Malon ship's shields are down. They're starting to suffer damage to their hull.
Then I believe it's vital we get this done as quick as possible. Let's get a tractor beam and get going.
I will spend our momentum, the one we have.
Mhm.
So I have 3 dice. Just look at
And
my
it's
talents.
control security, and the
Nope.
ship is a structure security.
Ash, why don't you take the ship?
Okay. Structure security, you said?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, we got the 2 we needed.
Okay, good. Just I had a 17 in that.
It's a harrowing moment.
The odds to miss that and not get a complication.
Yeah.
So it's a harrowing moment as you start to aim the tractor beam on the Barkavi, Alan, and immediately as you're getting ready to go, you're about to hit the button when your screen goes blank, like your targeting scanner goes blank, distorted by the ion storm. But still, you hit the button and it appears your calculations were correct, and the tractor beam connects to the Barkavi, and you know it's locked on to the motion of the Hyperion.
Captain, we have tractor beam locked on target.
Then I sort of direct Harlock. I say, Mr. Harlock, get us the hell out of this ion storm. So I think we have to give you 2 threat to make this happen. But Harlock would essentially get to have my assistance with presence command? Question mark.
Yeah. Presence command to work. I believe
Right.
for Harlock, the difficulty is going to be, let's say it's a difficulty of 3. Well, how are you guys getting out? Are you going to warp, or are you going to use another speed?
I think actually, if we just do an impulse, it gets us in the Barkavi out of there.
I'll say in this case, it's a difficulty of 2, and you can use a Helm Daring. Complication range is still increased by 1. And then you can assist with a command presence. Also, the Hyperion can assist with a con. It's probably con structure at this point, actually.
All right. Well, I'll roll for Harlock and Nick so someone could get the ship. So for thematic effect, I'll let Harlock roll first. And sorry, you said either daring or control plus con.
Daring con.
Oh, not that it matters for Harlock. He has a 10 in each. All right. So 2d20. He has a focus. All right. 2 successes there.
There you go. You're good. So it's just
Then...
Nyx for momentum at this point.
Yeah. So that is 4 successes, which is 2 momentum.
Harlock, you managed to spin the ship around, and at full impulse, you clear the ion storm with the Barkavi pulled behind you.
And I'd like to flavor that as we leave the sort of turbulent effect of the ion storm and we're approaching a safe distance, I would open up a channel back at my center chair and say, to the Malon vessel, can you hear us? Is everyone all right over there?
There's a moment, a little bit of static, then appearing on the view screen is a Malon who identifies himself. My name is Uwan. I am first officer of the Malon vessel Brakavi. Our captain is gravely injured and we've sustained heavy damage. Thank you for coming to our assistance. I was wondering if we could impose on you a little more. We really could use some help.
And I, of course, flash a smile and say, I am Captain Nix of the USS Hyperion. We, of course, would be happy to render you aid. Please send over the coordinates for beam out.
I will do immediately. Also, our captain is in critical condition. He will need immediate care.
I'll notify sickbay to be prepared.
Thank you, Hyperion. We will see you shortly. And the transmission cuts out.
And pretty much the second it does... Oh, go ahead, sorry.
When I hear that, just to play it safe, I immediately signal to security teams to send security personnel to transporter pad and the sick bay.
Actually, I would think that if they are in critical condition, why not just beam them straight to sick bay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if we're doing that, then it's just sick bay.
There were some bumps and bruises, but the captain is in the worst condition. Just to save us from jumping scenes, I'll probably just put everyone in sick bay. If anyone would like to see the Malons, that's just where they'll all be.
Okay. Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, but after they've beamed aboard, which only takes a moment, would anyone go and see them, or would we just leave it to the doctor?
I think Nyx would go because she sort of wants answers, not really in a, hostile way. She's just curious, how they got trapped there in the first place.
And I'd like to go, just being a slightly paranoid after our last encounter with the species out here, just to be careful. Not like type 2 phaser paranoid, but like definitely type 1 phaser on the hip.
Just hidden in your sock or something?
Yeah.
So our next
One
scene...
quick thing, though, before we switch, because I want to do this for flavor, since Ash is going to be taking over the bridge, before I get up from the console, I type in a very quick message. And when Ash sits down, they see not really an order, but a heavy suggestion from the captain to keep it civil between Ash and Talek in her absence.
And Ash will see that message, look over at Talek for a moment, and then clutch at her head as if she has a pounding headache. And I think that we would cut away from the scene with that.
Mm-hmm.
And as we move to the scene in sickbay is full. There are around 20 or 30 Malon here on various sickbay beds. Dr. Jarvik is floating, again, the holographic version of Dr. Jarvik, is floating around one of the Malons with Nurse Faulkner also assisting him. They're working on something. And as you walk in, Nyx and Alan, you see two other Malons who appear to be in better condition. One is the one who identified himself as Uwan, who you saw in the main viewer.
I think first, let me ask this. Does it look like I could bother the doctor, or is he like full on, I will save this patient mode?
He's not in really full on save the patient mode, and you don't hear any alarms or anything like that yet, but he and the nurse are, they're kind of in diagnostic mode at this point, so they're going over the captain with tricorders using the external scanners and everything. They have him in the isolation, like the critical care part of sickbay, but it doesn't look like they're in extreme emergency mode yet.
Okay. In that case, I'm going to motion for Mr. Allen to go talk to Uwan, and I'm going to sort of go up to Astrid and ask, well, Miss Falcon, what can you tell me about the captain here?
Would the doctor and Astrid have much of a chance to look over the captain yet?
I think
Like, would we
so.
have any information?
I think so. Let's do a roll for Falkland just so we can get her in play too. Let's do a medicine insight. Difficulty would have been 2, but I'll take 1 off of that because we'll just say Jarvik is assisting you. Difficulty 1. Falkland does have a focus.
Oh, well, I already clicked.
So Falkland, what you see from the captain, it looks like he looks like he's been exposed to a bunch of radiation. He's got the typical signs of radiation, like his skin is scarring, it looks a little burned. Everything you would expect from someone being exposed in an ion storm. Although it looks like, just from a cursory glance, that he seems to be much worse off than the others.
Captain, it looks like, due to their shields dropping during the ion storm, a lot of radiation got into the ship, and I'm guessing that the captain must have been particularly susceptible to it. And so they have some minor radiation poisoning, but I think we can help them feel better very quickly.
Quick out of character question: is Captain Vic conscious, or are they unconscious at the current moment?
He is unconscious.
Okay. In that case, I'm just going to get out of the doctor and nurse's way, and I say, keep me apprised of their situation, and if anything starts to take a turn for the worse, you have, of course, full discretion to save the patient.
Will do. Absolutely, Captain.
All right. And I start to move over to join Alan and the other Malon. So I wanted to give Alan a moment to maybe chat with the Malon in sort of a security fashion, because he would definitely approach the situation a hell of a lot more differently than Nyx would.
And Alan, as you approach the two of them, the two are almost in a heated exchange. The one to the left, who's obviously female, she's saying to Uwan, who's identified himself already as the first officer, and she's saying, I need to get back aboard the ship to repair it. We'll never make it home in time if I don't get the systems back. And Uwan says, it's Pemic, you'll have time to repair the ship. The focus right now is on the crew. We need to figure out what happened to draw us into that ion storm. And then they both turn as you approach, Alan. And Uwan says, thank you for coming to our rescue.
Alan has the typical Starfleet hands behind the back and just nods his head. And it was our pleasure. If you don't mind me asking, what were you doing around this ion storm?
Well, we were on a salvage mission to the in-class planet that you undoubtedly would have detected on your sensors. We found a nice treasure trove, if you will, on the planet, filled up our hull with enough to pay off most of our debt. And as we left, we suffered an engine malfunction and were drawn into the ion storm.
Engine malfunction.
And
And this happened after you picked up this salvage?
And as he said the word engine malfunction, he kind of cocked a look over at Pamic, and she seems a little irritated by that, almost as if he was accusing her of something. And she just kind of stamps her feet a little. Uwan says, yes, our vessel has not been in the state of repair that I would like for some time, but yes, we encountered engine difficulty after we left the planet's surface.
Well, your ship is safely out of the ion storm, so you don't have to worry about that anymore, and I'm sure we'll be able to give you some assistance to get you back on your way. And it appears this is the captain of our ship. This is Captain Nyx. Captain, this is Uwan and Pamik.
I nod to each of them and I say, so what can you tell me about, well, I'm sure my tactical officer has already been grilling you. What haven't you told him yet?
Uwan looks at you as you approach Nix, and he says, "You, this is coming to me now. You must be from beyond. We've heard tales of ships like this. There was one that passed through here this region of space not long ago. You are unlike any creature that we have seen before."
I'll take that as a compliment. Yes, we are sort of following up on the initial journey of the USS Voyager, who I believe encountered your species beforehand.
Yes, the Voyager is very well known to my people.
Well, perhaps we can get on better terms than what happened with Voyager.
Indeed. And then Pamit kind of cuts him off, and she says, "Captain, I'd be happy to provide you with details of our salvage mission if you'd like. Do you have a computer console?"
I actually just kind of go over probably to this desk here and spin the desk terminal around and let them type away.
And as she looks at the computer, she looks at it almost lovingly, and she sort of forgets about the rest of you for a moment, and she turns it and admires it, and she says, "This is a remarkable piece of technology. I have to know, I don't see any separate connections. Do you have a wireless connection to the rest of your computing?"
We do, in a sense.
But forgive me, Captain, I am the chief engineer of my vessel. I often find myself more interested in machines than people, unfortunately. Yes, I will begin to enter the information. And she starts to enter it in. And Uwan steps forward and he says, "The salvage is unfortunately quite boring. I'm sure you will see, Captain. We recovered the wreckage of a Tory vessel. They were most likely in some kind of fight. But it's a profitable run for us indeed. If it requires it, we will share our profits with you, considering that you saved us, of course."
No sharing of profits is required. We simply want to provide assistance and get you going back on home. Now, of course, I say that, but I do have to ask very bluntly. We're not talking any contraband here, or perhaps I should put it in another way. You're not transporting, say, indentured servants. You're not transporting something that could be used as a biogenic weapon. Basically, I want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence as Starfleet, if that makes any sense.
Why don't you, Nix, give me a command insight difficulty of 2?
Okay. I have persuasion or maybe even people reading.
People reading, yeah.
Okay.
Can I
And
can I assist in any way?
Yeah,
I have
Alan.
focus in investigations.
Oh, okay. So this is probably right where your mind is too. Why don't you do also the same? Actually, why don't you do a security insight as an assist, and you do have a focus.
Okay.
difficulty again?
2.
You know what? I'll spend momentum, just one. All right. Well, that's 3 successes to start off with.
And I got one.
Uwan's definitely nervous about something.
So, in almost a placating gesture, I say, please. I mean, again, I'm not here to take away your rightful salvage. I just, again, want to make sure that you're not going to take a weapons array and sell it to someone who will then use it to shoot down another ship.
And Pamik looks at him, and then she looks back. "Captain, let me say what a silly first officer won't say. We did find some Tory weapons, damaged, of course. That will be the most profitable part of our hull once we get it back to Malon. The weapons are damaged, but they are Tory weapons, of course, very sophisticated, and they will fetch a very good bounty for us."
Pamik, what kind of weapons are we talking about?
And she lists off a set of specifications. Disruptor weapon, basically. If it were repaired and like shot at the Hyperion, it would be something you'd be concerned about.
think I turn to the captain and just give a little bit of a knowing look, and then say, Captain, I forgot. I have a training assignment that I have to look into. Can you just give me one moment?"
Then I get the hint and cover as you go do whatever it is you're doing.
And I just walk out the doors, and then I ask, I send a message to the bridge, specifically to Commander Ash, to do a detailed scan on the salvage, so we have a complete look at what we're looking at here.
Acknowledged, Lieutenant. What was this race that you said produced these weapons?
The Tory, and I'll drop it in chat.
Yeah. That was just sort of an in-character question that
Yeah.
out of character, I know.
Oh, sorry.
But
I kept hearing Tory and Torian.
yeah. So could I check the Starfleet database and the records from Voyager? Do we have any information about this species?
Yeah, the information you immediately pull up, Ash, are that the Tory were very hostile, especially when it came to traveling in the underspace. And basically, they did not want to share that information at all. They were also directly in conflict with the, I'm going to pronounce it wrong this entire
Vought
season, so just deal with me. The Vought War, yeah. Directly
okay.
in contact with them. Admiral Janeway's note on the Tory is to be very cautious of them, that they are very aggressive.
Okay. Then I would actually get up, walk over to Telek's station, and I would ask him, Commander, are you familiar with any of this weapons technology?
That's a good question. Am I familiar with any of this weapons technology?
Telek, I think you would understand the basics. You could certainly look at the design. Well, why don't we do this first? Why don't we do a scan, and then based on how well you do, Telek, I'll give you that information, any information that you might want. So if you're
That's
doing
what
that,
I figured we would do.
if you're doing that scan, Telek, why don't we do an engineering control for you? Difficulty is going to be 0, and the ship can assist with a sensor science. Someone can get the ship for me.
I have. Oh, never mind.
So there you get 3 momentum. You can ask as many questions as you'd like. What you scan off of the Malon vessel is, first of all, it's pretty damaged. Not only were shields down, looks like the hull was compromised in a few places, the engines are down, but then also what you detect in the cargo hold is actually exactly what you've been told. There are, in addition to weaponry that has been damaged, there's lots of hull fragments and lots of duranium. And you continue on just checking out the weapons. If the weapons that this came from when they were working, the damage would probably have been like 8 challenge dice, vicious 1, disruptor. So it would have been a nasty weapon for sure.
I'm gonna ask: are the weapons on the ship able to be like fixed? Are they somewhat dangerous to us in any way?
If you give me momentum, I'll answer that for you.
I will do that.
You could fix them. Yeah, you haven't met the Malon engineer yet, so you don't know their competency, but you could fix it. Yeah, you could.
Commander, I would be a little bit worried about these weapons. They're in terrible condition, but they're not in irreparable condition. So, depending on the competence of the engineer, we definitely could be in some trouble if they do decide to repair those and use them on us somehow. We should probably keep positive relations with these people. Of course, that's obvious, but just from what I can see from what they have on their ship, they could potentially be a threat to us later on.
And at that, Ash would lean in and put a hand on Commander Telek's shoulder, looking at the various different reports and readouts on the screen, and say, yes, I think that's an accurate assessment of the situation. And she'd then lean back and release Commander Telek. Do you think that there might be any way for us And obviously, I'm not suggesting that we actually undertake this course of action, but it's good to have opportunities and options on the table. Might it be possible for us to sabotage the weapons in some way that would render them, well, irreparable, while making it seem as if it was damaged from the plasma storm?
I I think we might have to like directly interact with them to do that. If they haven't already been this damaged from the plasma storm, it would probably have to be some sort of manual destruction in order to damage them irreparably. Right now, they're in terrible shape, certainly, but definitely repairable.
Hmm. Well, continue looking at the scans, Commander, and if you have a suggestion as to how we might proceed, please inform me, and I'll entertain it. Is there anything else?
Do we wish to offer to help the ship with repairs? I think an engineering team over to begin that process.
Yes, Commander, I believe that would be appropriate. I'll contact their ship and any remaining crew, and we'll see what we can do to actually beam some engineering teams on board. But before I do
Understood.
anything, and then Commander Ash would return back to the captain's chair, sit down, relax ever so slightly, and then tap her comm badge. Lieutenant, Lieutenant Allen.
Yes, sir.
Well, you were right to be concerned. The ship is carrying some heavily damaged but fairly vicious disruptor-based weapons. You should probably make the commander or the captain aware of that, and you may also wish to point out that their ship is heavily damaged. We might extract payment. I mean, if we could convince them to give up those weapons in exchange for our assistance, well, I think we'd all feel a lot safer if those weapons were in our hands and not someone else's.
Yes, sir. And I turned to one of the ensigns I assigned to the door, and I asked them to get me a data pad. Commander, can you send me the information on? Send that information to this data pad.
Just one moment. Commander Telek, would you mind dispatching the information to Lieutenant Allen?
Absolutely. And I'll send that information over. And then after that, I'll get in contact with engineering to start getting some sort of repair crew together.
And Telek, I'd like to take a momentum for this information I'll give you. But you know that if you were on that ship and you could see those weapons, you could very easily do what Ash asked. Like, you could very easily break them to the point to where they could never be repaired. It wouldn't be too difficult, but you'd need to be there, like, physically to touch them. But that's something you could achieve yourself.
Then I'll ask Commander Ash, would you like me to join the repair team? I could potentially deactivate those weapons myself if I were to join the away team.
And Ash, looking slightly stunned, will actually lean back in the chair for a moment and smile, and then think about it for a moment and say, "You know what, Commander? That sounds like an excellent idea. But before you do anything, we should probably run this by the captain. I mean, I already destroyed an entire starship without her approval. I suppose this time I should actually ask."
That sounds like an appropriate plan.
Nonetheless, prepare your engineering teams one way or the other. We're probably going to be rendering them assistance.
And with that, we move the scene back to sickbay.
I wait a few extra beats before entering the room, and then I walk up to the captain and present the data pad and say, "I'm sorry to interrupt, Captain, but I thought these the results from the training exercises I thought you would find fascinating."
Again, I get the hint and I say, please excuse me for a moment. And I let Alan basically entertain our guests while I read through the pad. My question is looking at this pad, looking at the state of the weapons. Could I maybe do an insight engineering to see what it would take to actually disable them? Meaning that, let's say, for example, that the weapon, quote unquote, is a baseball bat. Well, to fix a baseball bat, you either have to make a new one or you duct tape it together. But if you snap the baseball bat in half, kind of very obvious you did that. So my question is, if we were to break these weapons, how obvious would it be to break them?
I don't think that's anything you need to make a roll for. I think much like I've already told Telek, if you were to get there yourself, or if Telek were there to actually physically be around them, there are plenty of ways to break it to where it could never be repaired. And you'd have to not, it wouldn't be a very difficult task. You'd have to be a little careful that you're covering your tracks. You'd want to be a little discreet about it, but you could. Like, there are components that you could just damage or break in such a way to where those weapons would, they could always be repaired, but they'd be more trouble than they'd be worth at that point.
I actually have an idea, but I can't really talk about it yet because I need somewhere they can't hear me. So I simply, take this information in hand, return to the little party we have going on here, and I say, well, let me say this. Though we are Starfleet, I will say we are not within Federation space. Therefore, we have no real claim on your salvage or any way to impose upon you in such a manner. However, I would say this: it would do a great on my stress level and my relief if you might be willing to part with those weapons.
Anyone looks a little upset, and then Pamuk holds up her hand and she says, Uwan, you mentioned that they could pay something, that you would pay them something for rescuing us. The weapons obviously upset them. And Uwan says, but the weapons are the main part of our haul. They will be. Do you know how many repairs we could afford on the ship? And then Pamuk says, wait, I have a compromise. And she turns to you, Nix. Our ship is significantly damaged. If we were to give you the weapons in exchange for further assistance in repairing our vessel, would that be a fair exchange?
I believe it would be an acceptable exchange. And to be clear, I'm not also asking you to give up everything. I am willing to trade, as it were. Perhaps we have something that would interest you or would act as a, what is the expression? And she kind of thinks for a moment, almost lost in thought. Sorry, I've had a perchant for human expressions recently. Basically, what I'm getting at is perhaps we have something that would make up for the loss of your weapons.
And Pamuk starts to say, well, you've rescued us, and then Uwan cuts her off. He's obviously the more shrewd businessman here. Pamuk is very eager to give you whatever you need. She just only cares about getting the ship back and going. Uwan seems to maybe want to weigh a little bit more about how profitable this whole thing is going to be. And he cuts her off and he says, Captain, maybe we could talk about what you could offer us. Do you happen to have a need for any duranium? We have significant quantities in our hull.
Out of character, do we?
No, I don't think you do.
Okay. Trying to think out of character what they would know already about Starfleet. Maybe it's something that got lost in translation, but basically I'm proposing like maybe we give them not just the repair work, but we also give them something like maybe a bioneural gel pack or some technology we can afford to part with that isn't going to like violate the Prime Directive kind of a thing.
And as you're considering, Uwan looks around and he fixates on a replicator. And he says, am I correct in remembering that you have matter replicators on a vessel like this?
We do.
And he and Pamuk exchange glances, and he says, we have been living on freighter rations for the last month. They are quite tasteless and, quite frankly, terrible. Would it, and he actually licks his lips as he's saying this, would it be possible to sample some of your alien cuisine?
And I sort of smile, showing off my teeth, not in a hostile way, but I say, I think that would be a fair trade. I would be happy to provide you a good meal and otherwise provide you with some additional food besides your rations for those weapons.
And they both look very happy with this. Uwan in particular now, he's totally changed his tone from maybe stopping. His concern isn't necessarily on making a deal now. It's just he's very excited about the direction this has gone. And he looks over to you, Alan, and he says, why don't you show me the wonders of this matter replicator? And Pamuk kind of nods and she shakes her head a bit and she says, Captain, if you don't mind, I'd like to get back to the ship and begin repairs immediately. It's a matter of pride that our vessel is damaged, and I need to get the ship back and running. I hope you can understand.
I do. And in fact, I've anticipated your needs. I have Commander Telek and an engineering away team waiting for you in Transporter Room 2. If you will follow Zach here, and I point at Zach.
Her eyes widen a minute, and then she looks at you, and she almost seems a little lost for words, and she says, you have an engineering team? I'm the only engineer on my ship. I can't wait to meet them. Please lead the way. And she marches over to Zach. And then
once
exit.
everybody starts filtering away on the pad, I send a quick text message up to the bridge, and one that Telek would get as well, to make it very clear that we're not to disable those weapons because we're acting on good faith here.
You'd receive an acknowledging message.
But yeah, with everybody filtered out, I think I sort of probe Falcon and Jarvik for the condition of Captain Vic. But if there's been no change, then I simply tell them to give me a ping when there is, and I'll go return to the bridge.
And Jarvik, actually, as you're starting to leave, Nix, he motions over to you, and he says, Captain, if I may take a moment of your time.
Go ahead.
And he starts, and then he stops. And you remember from the report that you read about the Zinni Aquatic, it's a fairly annoying trait that they have. But actually, when they talk normally, they talk very slowly. But when they're thinking, they actually talk even slower, and will take a long time to even think before they complete a sentence. So he actually has a lot on his mind. You can tell by his not completing a sentence in a timely way.
I mean, I wait patiently as he goes through his words.
Captain, I must report that the condition of the Malon captain is strange.
Strange in what way?
While he exhibits the traits of a radiation exposure, it is much more severe than I would expect.
Sort of catching on where he might be going with this, I ask, are you suggesting that perhaps someone discharged an energy weapon on him?
No, nothing quite like that, Captain. I would expect in an energy discharge to see... And he trails off. And there's several moments where there's nothing. And Falkman, you might get a little impatient, just waiting. And then he continues, I would expect to see burns or signs of high levels of molecular decohesion around an area. However, the captain appears to be suffering widespread systemic degradation. I've tried our normal radiation therapy, and it has been so far ineffective.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, Doctor. Aren't the Malon typically like this to begin with?
This is my first Malon patient, so it is probable that I do not have an adequate baseline. However, what I hoped to treat was radiation exposure from an ion storm, and currently it is my theory that there is more going on with the captain.
I'm in agreement. There's something about this situation that doesn't smell right to me, and I have a very good nose, as you well know.
And he says to Falkland, Nurse, would you mind smelling of the captain for me and relaying what the smell is that you recover?
It's an expression, Doctor. It means that I'm in agreement. I feel there's something wrong with the situation.
I understand an expression. It is something lost quite possibly in translation.
I will apologize myself again. I have been reading quite a number of human literature and media recently. I might have picked it up from them.
Jarvik nods and turns back to his patient because an alarm is actually starting to sign a signal as he goes back to his work. And then off in the corner, one has kind of pulled you aside, Alan, and he really wants you to show him the replicator. And he says, you said your name again is, what?
Allen, David Allen. Actually, Yuan, this probably isn't the best place to sample the food of the Federation. Why don't I take you to 10 Forward? It's got the best view on the ship.
Indeed. Let's go to this fort then, and yes, I'd like to see the best view on the ship, and of course, see the wonders of this matter replicator.
And I lead him out the door. I do make sure I motion with one of the guards at the door to follow me, to come with me.
And we're actually going to transition to the next scene. Sorry, Alan, do you have something else?
Nope, I was just going to say, and I lead him towards the turbo lift and then to 10 Forward.
And as you guys exit 6 Bay, we're actually going to jump to the interior of the Malon ship because I believe you were going with the engineering team to that vessel. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
As you materialize on the Malon vessel, actually, let's give you Al too to help. The engineering team, you guys all spread out and begin to look around the ship. So the interior of the Malon vessel, it's Spartan to say the least. It immediately as you appear, it has a very rich and thick smell, kind of like sweat and old fabric that your Vulcan nose picks up very heavily as you materialize. And it looks pretty rough. A lot of this damage most likely came from the ion storm, but you can tell it looks like the ship is in a pretty severe state of disrepair anyway.
Do you have a specific area of the ship that you want to prioritize? I can send my people either out towards all areas, or we can focus on one area at a time. Whatever you prefer.
And Pamuk is looking around very excitedly at not only you, but also Al is floating around the ship. And her eyes are wide, actually, with kind of wonder. And she looks at you to I'm sorry. You have to forgive me. I have never encountered beings like yourself. Mr. Telek, I believe you were called. I could certainly use some help with our warp core. Our warp drive has been acting up a bit since we left the planet. In fact, are there systems that could be repaired? And she grabs a pad off of one of her terminals and hits a few buttons and hands it to you. On the pad is just a list. Like there's hull breaches, of course, shields were down. But she's right that the warp core is what needs the most help.
I'll take a look with you at the warp core, and I'll send EX33 out to do some of the other repairs that need to be done.
With that order, EX33 buzzes away very quickly. He can also go outside on the whole much easier than everyone else, and he's hurriedly rushing off to do that job. But as you and Pamuk head over to the warp core, this is a very small ship, by the way. The ship itself is large, but the actual livable space that's not being used by cargo is very small. So she walks you over to the warp core, and she suggests, I'll need assistance here. I pride myself in being an engineer, but truth be told, I'm I'm not very remarkable. I'd say I'm average at best, but the warp core was acting a little strange when we took off from the planet, and I just was unable to figure out what was going on.
That's totally understandable. We can't expect one engineer to take care of an entire ship all of the time, so I am happy to assist.
Thank you, Commander. I have to say it's quite refreshing to be amongst people such as yourself. As an engineer, I think you can understand the high expectations that the crew has of us sometimes.
Did they expect you to be the miracle worker?
Indeed, anytime the captain's chair would squeak or Uwan's living quarters were not to the temperature he desired, I was always the first to be called.
Well, I will make sure that the ship is in top condition so that hopefully you can get a little bit of time off.
Thank you, Commander. It'll be great to have the ship operational again. And she motions over to the warp core. And if you can give me an engineering insight difficulty 1 here. And you do have a focus. Two momentum. Immediately, you can tell the problem with the warp core is that the particle mix needs to be adjusted a bit, and it's probably leaking a little bit of radiation that's fairly harmless. But if you can tweak the mixture, you can get the efficiency back up, and the warp core should be functional. Within most specifications. It's very old and probably needs to be replaced, but that's really what it needs first of all.
I'll adjust those particle mixes and maybe do a couple of extra tests on it just to make sure that it's in complete working condition. And as I'm changing all of that, I'm going to show Pemic what I'm doing and give her a little bit of a rundown on how to fix this sort of problem so she'll know how to fix it in the future.
She's very focused on what you're showing her, and she nods her head and seems very interested. And she says, I have to confess, Commander, I am very eager to get home to see my family. Do you mind me asking, do you have any children?
Not yet. I tend to spend most of my time with engines like these rather than, going out and about and meeting somebody I might want to settle down with. But that just means that, I have a certain set of skills. So I guess you could say every engine that I work on is like a child.
I can quite understand the life of a spacer can be difficult at times. In fact, my son, Bennis, he will be very happy when I get home. He will love to hear the stories of your vessel. While very young, he is a natural engineer. It quite exceeds my capacity.
Perhaps it would be nice to take him under your wing then. You can teach each other.
He has much he could teach me. However, my husband tends to have a little bit more of a pessimistic view of Bennis's experiments. In fact, our food mixer was the subject of Bennis's engineering eyes one day. It exploded and created a small fire, but I think the boy learned quite a bit about small engine design in the process. Although it was difficult to prepare a meal for a small time.
Hopefully now he'll know how to repair it for the next time. Either that or he's learned not to take things apart.
I don't think anything could stop him from tinkering. I suppose in that way he has gotten that from me. I call myself an engineer, but I guess a tinkerer would be the best descriptor for who I am.
I think that's fair. I mean, sometimes you are going to be an engineer that knows all of the theory and understands how each part works, and sometimes you just need to be an engineer who knows that it's going to work. and knows sort of not intellectually, but just knows that it's gonna do its job.
And like you're saying this as you're working, on the warp core problem. The adjustment of the particle mix was a very easy task for you. You could really do this in your sleep. But then as you're working through it, your tricorder actually starts beeping, and it's an alarm. And it's really strange, but what the tricorder is telling you is that the warp core itself, its molecular integrity, is slowly falling apart.
Can I tell if like any of the other systems have those sorts of errors showing up, or if it's just my tricorder?
If you give me a momentum, I'll tell you that.
Sure. So that means we're at 5. Because we had gained 2 earlier.
Yeah, from your roll.
Yeah,
So as you-
sorry, I'm having lag with Roll20 right now, but I'll have it fixed
It's
in a
okay.
sec.
I'm just trying to keep it in my mind too.
So Telek, as you're scanning, you move your tricorder up from the warp core and you just start scanning the hull. And actually everything in the ship, the entirety, is in a state of molecular decay. The worst is around the warp core, but outside around from the warp core, things are getting worse and worse.
Would I know if this could have been caused by the ion storm, or if it's just, something so out of the norm?
I would say, unless you want to investigate further, just a cursory glance, this is very unusual. Most starship hulls, especially when you have shields involved too, can deflect a lot of stuff. And widespread molecular just incohesion, like what's happening here, is incredibly rare. This might happen something like if you shot a disruptor at a little piece of metal and it vaporized. Something like this might happen, but it would be a much faster situation. This is like a slow, gradual molecular decay and a scale that you've never seen before.
I have one question. What sort of encounters have you had with the ship? Has it come under any damage other than from the ion storm lately?
Well, we did have a patchy landing on the planet, but not exactly, nothing more than usual. The Brakavi and I have a love-hate relationship. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. She's always gotten us through the worst, and I hope she'll get us through even further.
I'm a bit worried because there seems to be some underlying problems with the ship and its integrity. I'm not sure like what is necessarily causing this unless you've come into contact with something very unusual. What planet was the one that you said that you went down on? Was it the closest one in the system, or are you on your way from a different system?
Oh yes, it was the planet in this system, and she keys up a few buttons, and the yellow world of the Class N planet appears on your screen. This Class N planet was really the only planet in the system. Yes, this is where we found the salvage, yes.
That's very interesting. I'm going to do a couple more repairs. I know you know where some of the other ones are. We could split up and try to cover more ground.
Indeed, Commander. We could certainly do that, and of course, if you need any, well, I hesitate to say if you need any help because you are obviously much more competent as an engineer than I am, but if there's anything, any of the nooks and crannies that I can point out to you on where I may have hidden any problems, certainly let me know. But yes, I'll continue to work on some other systems.
Absolutely. And call on me if there's anything that you need assistance with as well.
Of
And I
course.
want to take my pad and send off that information to Commander Ash, along with a message that says, this ship seems to be decaying in a very unusual way. you might want to look into the nearby planet since that was the last place they were.
Telek, as Pamuk walks off, she's kind of talking to you, but sort of talking to herself at the same time. And she says, and perhaps after we've got these systems reprogrammed, I can tell you about my daughter, Weeva, who she's very shy, but she plays the most beautiful flute that you'll ever hear.
And Select will just sort of nod his head and get to work on a different repair as she walks away.
And we'll actually cut back to the bridge at this point. So, Ash, I think, Nix, tell me, were you headed to the bridge?
I was, yes.
So we'll say at this point you have arrived on the bridge, Nix. Which is probably about the time, Ash, that you'd have gotten the report from Telek.
All right. Then Ash, vacating the seat to allow Nix to take the captain's chair, would then settle down into the first officer's chair next to her and pull up the report that has been sent by Commander Telek. Captain, we've received some rather disturbing news from Commander Telek. It seems as if the entire vessel is undergoing some kind of hitherto unknown form of molecular decohesion. I have to wonder if this might be some kind of subspace metal parasite, or I don't know, something might have picked up from the nearby planet. Nonetheless, I recommend that we run some detailed sensor scans on their vessel and our own to make sure that ours hasn't been contaminated by something.
I nod as if I'm paying attention, but Nyx is actually heavily sort of reading through the scans. And I might have missed this, and if I did, I apologize. When these scans that Telek ran happened, were we seeing the same sort of degradation on the salvage, or is it just the ship?
It's just the ship.
Okay. Then this might be a little meta, but Nyx is going to go, well, that can't be right. And she's going to pull up the old Voyager logs. And she's going to pull up specifically a log dealing with the silver blood. And she's going to sort of show Commander Ash and say, would this not fit? I mean, maybe, I'm not the most medically inclined person out there, but this would fit all the variables.
Huh. I hadn't read this log. Could I make perhaps an insight science check to determine if the readings that we picked up, or perhaps another scan of their vessel, would allow me to make a comparison between the two?
Yeah, why don't you give me a science insight difficulty of 3?
Would
If
mental
you-
repository apply?
Yeah, I think you'd have time to consider it. And if you actually want to do a scan, then you can get an assist by the ship, and that would be a sensor science. But it would not be something that would be invisible. Like anyone on the ship would probably tell that you're scanning.
Then I don't think I'll be assisted by the ship. But could I? No, I suppose I will. There's nothing untoward about us scanning their vessel. And I'll buy 2 dice with that.
So you're down
If
to
you
a
want to get the
difficulty.
ship, that way you're doing something.
So you're down to a difficulty of 2 with mental repository.
And is someone getting the ship, or?
It looks like Brad might be stepped away. I'll get it. Let's see, sensor science.
And I do have a question I want to ask with my free question in a minute.
So by my count, that's what, 4 momentum?
Yeah, I think I put you guys a cap again. So Ash, as you're scanning, the records that Voyager has of the Silverbloods just talk about like how the Silverbloods were formed, I believe, when they met them on that planet, the demon planet. The records don't say anything about this level of decohesion.
Yeah, that was in the sequel episode where Voyager just found them and they had already denaturated. So they probably
You know what?
know
I might have
that.
meted then because I thought they knew about that.
Don't think so.
I think the tragedy of that episode was they were dead just as they were reaching Voyager.
Yeah.
Actually, no. Wait a second. In the original Silverblood episode, I forget if it's Harry, quote unquote, or Paris, but doesn't one of them more or less decompose or start decomposing?
No, I don't believe so.
Huh. Then yeah, I'm gonna say that's probably my bad. I may have met it there.
The other question, well, is there any sort of point of comparison? Nothing really?
You do have some ideas. So the Voyager sensor logs did give you some sensor data on Silverbloods in general, and you could apply some of that to try to create a scan or at least like a litmus test to apply to the ship. And that could give you information, a pretty close test on like Silverblood yes, Silverblood no.
Okay. And the free question that I have as the science officer, if that would apply, would be, can we extrapolate back using the, I don't know whether it's linear or a quadratic kind of or exponential decay, could we extract or extrapolate backwards to see when it began to start decaying? And would that correlate with when they were on the planet trying to salvage things?
Yeah, you can, by monitoring it, you have a pretty good idea of the time frame from when they were in the ion field, the ion storm rather. And it looks like if you it's kind of a reach, so you're not 100%. So with accuracy, you're probably like a 70% certainty that it was probably around the time they left the planet.
Okay, well, Captain, from what I've gathered from these sensor scans, it does appear that something on the planet triggered this denaturation of their hull. And if the medical reports I've just received from sickbay are any indication, perhaps even their captain.
Hmm.
And you'll see that Ash looks quite trepidatious for a moment, and again puts a hand to her neck and then squeezes briefly. And then she says, I'm somewhat hesitant to suggest this, Captain, but if the Malon are hiding something, I might be able to telepathically scan the commander. He might know something about what happened to him.
Hmm. Now, to be clear, are you asking for permission to use your telepathic abilities, or are you asking to perform something more akin to a mind meld?
My Betazoid telepathic abilities, Captain.
It's important I ask that question because I would be extremely against anything approaching a mind meld against an unwilling target.
Well, rest
However,
assured, Captain,
with
I would be against a mind meld anyways, so
that's good. That's good. I would say you may act within your discretion using your telepathic abilities. However, I would simply remind you that they are sentient species just like anyone else here. They have a right to privacy, and I would simply say that you should not go digging into unrelated matters. Is that understood?
absolutely, Captain. After what we've all been through, I have a even greater respect for individual autonomy and its preservation.
Good, 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 good. And maybe as Ash is about to leave, Nick stops her and lowers her voice and says, "Is everything all right, Commander? I've noticed a bit of tenseness, a bit of tells, as it would be."
And she sighs, settles back in her chair for a moment, and says, honestly, Captain, I don't know what kind of reports you might have received from the ship's counselor. Not that I'm particularly fond of seeing him, but no, I'm not well. Um, I I've been bucking the system for most of my career. You've read my records, you know about it, but this is the first time that I wasn't, or I don't know if I was acting of my own volition. Was it my choice to take those lives, or was it my brain chemistry? I don't like that not knowing. I don't like the idea that I wasn't in control of what I did. And that's staying with me, I guess. I don't know.
No, I completely understand the situation you find yourself in. It's one of the things where, for people like us, especially in command, we are sort of very self-critical, is how I would put it. We are always questioning if what we're doing is the right thing. And sometimes we have to accept that our judgment can be compromised by forces outside of our control. What I would ask is is this in any way going to impact your duties going forward? If you feel that you can continue being a good officer, I of course have no problem letting you continue. But I would ask that you be honest with me, because as much as the counselor has said to me, which isn't much, all things considered, I would rather give you time and space than let this become a developing problem where you're maybe snapping at other members of the bridge crew.
Well, Captain, there are a few things. First of all, you say that you often question some of the decisions that you made, and I can understand that, but the thing is, I I don't. I If I made a mistake, then I own that and I move on. If if I made the right call, I own that and I move on. But now I don't even know if it was right or wrong or if I made the choice myself. It's not about questioning the decision I made, it's questioning whether I made the decision at all. As for my abilities to perform my duties, well, as a Starfleet officer, and she laughs and sort of leans back in her chair, rubs her forehead. Uh, One of the things that I actually believe in when it comes to the Federation is that we are pursuing truth and that we have a duty to truth. Whether that's personal truth about my fitness for duty or whether it's scientific truth about, she gestures towards the view screen and the ship beyond, about, I don't know, silver bloods or metal fatigue caused by subspace parasites. So you can trust me to be honest, whatever the circumstances. And I'll speak to the counselor. If you want the unvarnished truth from him about my condition and my fitness for duty, you deserve to have it.
Well, that sort of thing would have to come from you, Ash. I cannot violate counselor patient confidentiality.
Understood, Captain. If I believe that I'm a danger to the ship or I'm unfit for duty, well, my commitment to that truth will necessitate that I inform you.
And I nod very somberly, very seriously, and then I sort of crack a smile and say, and worst case, I'll just have to shoot you with the phaser I keep hid.
I'd like to see you try, Captain.
Say what, if you're feeling up to it, maybe we can go to the target range on the holodeck later.
Uh, you know what, Captain? I think I'd enjoy that. And if the captain would permit her, she would depart for sickbay.
Yeah. And Nyx will remain on the bridge, sort of waiting for the shoe to drop, as it is.
Ash, were you going to head to where the captain is, because the captain's in sick bay, or were you going to head to where the first officer, Uwan, and Alan are? Because they're in different places now.
Yeah, I guess I'd actually go for the first officer in the mess hall, presumably.
Okay. So as you walk away, we transition actually to our next scene in the mess hall. And at this point, the mess hall is mostly vacant because everyone's, off on their duty stations or, resting, getting ready for the next shift. But as the scene moves across the tables, there is just rows upon rows of food. Uwan seems to be sampling everything that the replicator can create. And Alan, he's asked you repeatedly, what is this? What is this? And he keeps asking you for more food. And he's not eating all of it. He's taking several bites and he's smiling and he's just moving on. And you've now made your way to Earth desserts.
All right, 2-1. All that stuff, great. But everyone knows that dessert is the best part of the meal. Am I right?
We do not have this course you call dessert, but I am eager to try it.
Ooh. All right. Well, you are in for a real treat. What you see here is called ice cream. And I've actually had 3 flavors prepared for you. We have vanilla, we have chocolate, we have strawberry. We actually call this Neapolitan.
And his jaw kind of drops as he looks at it. Is this your favorite?
I'm more of a vanilla guy, but that's the great thing about Neapolitan. You have 3 different flavors.
He looks at it. One question. Why do they call it ice cream? I don't understand where the cream is.
You know, I think that's something for philosophers to find out. What you're here to do is try it. And I thrust a spoon into his hand.
Aggressively grabs the spoon and he slaps you on the back and he says, "Yes, my friend, I am here to try it." And he takes a huge scoop. And actually, he makes a little bit of headway with the spoon and some of the ice cream falls off and he just abandons the spoon and sticks his face into the ice cream like an animal and starts biting at it.
Yeah, and I kind of like, hold. What? Be careful. There is a thing called an ice cream headache, and I can see you have it.
He leans back and his eyes are just, clutched in pain and agony. And he hits the table with his hand. And after a moment, you can tell he works his way through it.
Put your tongue to the roof of your mouth and breathe.
And there's tears in his eyes, but he looks at you, Alan, and he says, "This was glorious. This was absolutely glorious. Give me more, please. With enough of this, you could have my entire ship."
Our species aren't that different. And I start going through all the flavors of Baskin Robbins.
As you guys are working on the new ice cream, Ash, you make your way in, and you notice that Uwan and Alan are working on the food. Like they're completely focused on that, and they don't see you come in on the end of the mess hall. And I'm actually gonna throw a challenge here at you, Ash. You have a value. Our first duty is to the truth. So if you exert your telepathic contact with Uwan currently, because he's not paying attention, he doesn't even know you're there, you'll have the best chance of breaking through any kind of conditioning or resistance he might have. Basically, you will have a much easier chance reading anything about him from this distance without, approaching him or giving him the chance to notice you. So basically, I'm going to create the complication in that it's not very ethical what you're doing, but I'll give you a determination if you scan from here without announcing yourself.
Oh, I would have thought it would be the opposite, that I would actually feel compelled to go up to him and not necessarily tell him, but actually look him in the eye as I'm doing this, and that would actually increase the difficulty of it by introducing a complication there.
Well, I was going to say the complication is that it's not very ethical. So your value is our first duty is to the truth. And the idea here is that I'm going to use that value in a negative way. And that, it's your first duty is to the truth, but you're kind of going against your ethics here in that you're scanning someone not necessarily without their permission, but it would be much easier for you to get a deeper scan in these conditions.
Okay. Then...
Are you saying we notice? Or you're not trying to be stealthy?
If Ash would like, I would give them a determination to be stealthy and a little mischievous about it.
Oh, okay. So I wasn't following what you were actually saying there, because it sounded like, okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not being very clear there, but yeah, I'm basically using your value in a negative way. Our first duty is to the truth, to give you a determination, and that, you could stand here, have that determination, and have a better chance of scanning Uwan, but the downside is you're doing it kind of on the sly and you're not letting him know, which is not very it's not a very moral act for a telepath.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to take that.
Okay, very good.
So I would actually walk over to the table, and I would take a look at the spread of different foods that have been placed on the table. Some of it had been taken back to the replicator. Hello, Lieutenant. Is everything going all right here?
Oh, Commander, it seems that our guest here is enjoying some of Earth's finest delicacies, but ah, how silly of me. Maybe there's something from all the worlds of the Federation that I've missed. Do you have anything you would recommend that Uwan here tries?
Well, growing up, I always enjoyed udaberries and swix, which are two different kinds of fruit, roughly analogous to fruit, on Beta Z. I don't suppose you'd like something as a bit of a palate cleanser. It seems you've been exposed to, and she looks at the ice cream and pies and rich, other rich foods, something that might be a little bit lighter on the palate to cleanse it.
And Ewan looks up and he's got just ice cream dripping down the whole front of his face. And he says, I will try whatever you want to give me, Commander. I've told the lieutenant with enough of this, you could have my entire ship. I'll retire and just live on your vessel, eating whatever food you give me from this replicator. It's a marvelous device.
All right. Well, just give me a minute.
Commander, I've never had that either.
Well, I'd be happy to replicate you a sample as well.
Ah, this is great, Uwan. We're learning so much.
And so she would go over to the replicator and order some udaberries and swix in cream, and then offer it to the two gentlemen at the table. Now, you'll want to get a full mouthful of both, because the udaberries, they're a little sweeter. The swix is more like a raspberry, so it's a little tart.
When he opens his mouth and basically shovels the entire thing into his mouth, and, you know, berries are spilling off the side of his face as he's chewing all of it together.
And Alan just takes like one spoonful, and it's like you can tell it's way too sweet and sour for him. His eyes are just closed, and his mouth is puckering. He's like, "This is fantastic, Commander." And then he puts down the rest of the bowl.
Owen at this point has got like berries down his face and ice cream, and after he's finished his bite, he smiles and looks at you, Ash, and he says, Commander, you are quite a connoisseur of the most exquisite I'm sorry, a wave of dizziness just passed before me. And you notice, even though he's a very different color from, you know, the two of you, he has grown a shade paler, and actually his skin looks a little gray, in fact.
Can I withdraw a tricorder to scan him?
Sure.
I will go on the other side of him and prop him up so he doesn't fall. Maybe push him into a chair.
And as he collapses in the chair, Ash, assuming you're getting a medical tricorder?
Yes.
Give me a medicine insight, please, difficulty of 3.
Okay. Would augmented ability insight apply, or?
I think so, yeah, but let's not forget the increased complication range, because that could be fun.
Right. So I'll buy 2 dice for that. That's all right.
Oh, Commander, I hope he's not lactose intolerant.
I think your sensor operations focus would apply here too. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
We'll have to replace the whole rug.
So that is the 4 successes, I think.
It
But
looks...
1 complication.
Yeah, 1 complication. How would you like to handle that? Do you want to buy it away or give it to me?
Well, let me just... Could I know what it is that's happening to him? Because if it's like an allergic reaction, suddenly it becomes like life-threatening and severe, or something like that might be the reasonable complication. But maybe I could hear what I've discovered before we flavor that complication.
Sure. So what you've discovered is actually his molecular cohesion in his entire body is breaking down.
I would say perhaps the complication is that prevents us from actually beaming him to sickbay. That the molecular cohesion prevents the transporter from getting a lock on him.
That's a very good complication. Yeah, if you beamed him anywhere, he probably would not rematerialize wherever you beam him.
Well, oh damn, his molecular structure is just decohering. We have to get him to sickbay immediately. But if we use the transporter, well, I don't know what will show up on the other end. Get his shoulders.
And Alan moves to help get Uwan to the sick bay.
Yeah. And I think that we would just cart him along, and I would order a passing ensign to contact sickbay and inform them that we have a patient coming in, and basically I'd give him the tricorder and tell him to forward that information to sickbay to have them prepare as best as possible.
Stay with us, Uwan. Stay with us. I'll make sure you get a crap ton of ice cream. If you just stay with us, all the ice cream you want.
And as you're moving him to sickbay, he looks at you, Alan, and he says, I will hold you to that, my friend. I'm sorry, I maybe was too enthusiastic about, and his head actually lulls over and he goes unconscious.
And I think we pick up the pace.
And at that point, we're going to move to the bridge. And just because I want to get Telek back in, Telek, we're going to say that you will have finished any of the repairs on the vessel that you could manage at this point. The problem with the ship is it is just coming apart. Like the molecules, there's two Teleks. The molecules on the ship are just, like I said, just coming apart.
At some point it's just going to be irrevocable.
Yeah, you managed to get everyone off the ship, including Pamuk, but you estimate probably within 6 or 7 hours the ship is just gonna not exist anymore.
Captain, we've done whatever repairs we can, but I'm not sure unless we figure out a solution to fix this degradation that it's going to be a functional ship for much longer.
And Nyx sort of racks her brain thinking, what in the world could this be? And I think Nyx would share the Silverblood theory, even if we might have ruled it out at this point, just because it might be a good leaping point to future theories. And as I'm done explaining the Silverblood theory, I say, even if it's not something where they need to return to a planet or anything, maybe there is some form of problem with that ion storm, that when their shields went down, they contracted something. And I actually look to whoever's at science and I say, science, get us a high intensity scan of that ion storm.
And Zach, he leans forward. Forgive me, Captain, but we have a vessel approaching. They are hearing us.
On screen.
On screen appears Captain Vic, the Malon. And he says, my name is Captain Vic. I'm the captain of the Malon freighter Brakavi. We picked up a distress call in this system. We're just seeing if there's anything we could do. I see the Malon vessel here. Are you providing assistance?
And I sort of look at him a little bit questioningly, but I think this confirms her theory at this point. So I think it's safe for me to say Nyx stands up and sort of does the Picard maneuver, adjusting her uniform, and says, Captain Vic, I am Captain Nyx of the United Federation of Planets vessel USS Hyperion. Yes, we were responding to a distress call put out by this vessel. However, I believe I have a doppelganger of you in my sickbay.
Could you elaborate, Captain?
And I nod at whatever ensign is at comms to send the data that we might have gotten from sickbay at this point. Basically showing that, yeah, I'm telling the truth. We have a Captain Vic in our sickbay.
And the captain, he's reading a report like on a pad, basically the report that you sent over. And he looks at it for a moment, and you can tell even across the view screen that his expression darkens even further. He straightens up in his chair. He looks over. Ewan, prepare phasers on that vessel. Lock on. And Zach
Now,
turns to you.
Captain, what's
Zach turns to you, Nix, and he says, Captain, they have locked their weapons on the Malon vessel.
And maybe she gets a little bit more serious now. Says, Captain, there's no need for violence here. Let's talk this out. Why would you want to destroy this vessel?
We are familiar with the creatures that you're referring to. They are a blight on the galaxy. It appears they have tried to replicate us without our permission. This has happened sometimes. Don't worry, I will destroy this vessel and help you exterminate the rest.
Captain, if I may be so bold, these creatures, these Silverblood, they are sentient. They are, in a way, they are just like you and me. Perhaps their origins are dubious, but if we crucified the child for every sin of the parent, it would be a situation where we wouldn't have any children anymore. There would be no one to carry on our legacies. Perhaps we can find a peaceful solution here. I would hate to have to interpose my vessel between yours and the creatures. I believe there's a nonviolent solution here, and I'd like to find it.
Nix, why don't you give me a presence command difficulty 3?
All right. I am going to spend 3 momentum because this is a very important roll, and hopefully this time I roll 8 billion complications. All right. Let's see. And I'm going to save the save determination in case I got a reroll.
Your persuasion will apply here.
Excellent. Hey, 4 successes.
Vic kind of turns around and he says, Go on, deactivate weapons. Captain, I think you're right. We don't need to resort to violence here. I hope you understand, though, that we did not approve these creatures to copy us, and I will leave it to you to discover a way to dispose of them however you see fit. We will not engage in hostilities. And he cuts the transmission.
And as the transmission cuts, I say, well, I was going to offer him the non-weapon salvage that the Silverbloods picked up, but he kind of cut me off there. So I guess his loss. But at this point, I call down to sickbay, and I say, Doctor, you're going to want to look up Silverbloods and potentially create a Class Y atmosphere for the captain, quote unquote.
Jarvik replies a little faster than usual. Captain, I'm afraid you're going to want to come down here. The Malon captain has expired.
I was afraid of that. Still go through with creating a Class Y environment, and let's get all of the individuals from our rescue target there. I will be down shortly. And I guess Telek has the bridge of all things.
Nick, as you make your way into sickbay, you can see that the doctor's taken your orders, and all of the Malons are in isolation beds, and he's activated force field to try to recreate a Class Y environment around each of them. But as you walk in, Jarvik floats over to you. I am sorry, Captain. We did everything that I could think of, but the captain's molecular decay was too much.
Doctor, you would know better than I. Could we substitute a Class Y environment with a Class N? Meaning that if we were to get the ship and these people down to the planet, would they be able to survive down there?
The Class Y atmosphere does not seem to have had a positive effect on the survivors. We could try to replicate the environment of the planet, but according to my scans, it would be lethal to them.
I think, Doctor, that's a risk we may have to take, but not to worry. I'm not going to ask you to violate the Hippocratic Oath. I will ask for a volunteer. So I actually walk over to the patients and I say, because I mean, well, I guess the important question is they are surviving already in a Class Y environment, correct?
I think the doctor has put them on the edge of not surviving. So they are in environmental suits like that they're all wearing. He has not exposed them to the full temperature of a Class Y. Like he's tried to recreate the atmospheric density to a point that wouldn't kill them if they were Malon, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
He hasn't risked killing them by making it Class Y.
Gotcha. In that case, I just sort of stand between all the patients and I say, all right, what I'm going to ask is very difficult, but I hope you'll understand the position I'm in. We have a theory as to how to treat your condition. However, in order to test that theory, we will need to expose one of you to a dangerous environment. I would ask for volunteers for this. This should be purely voluntary. But if any of you feel that you wish to be this experimental subject, please come forward now while we still have a chance to save you.
And Pamic looks at you really in fear and terror, and she says, Captain, what is happening? What is happening? What did we do?
You did nothing wrong. This is a situation that is going to be very confusing if our theory is correct.
And Ash, I think what you're picking up on is all 30 Malons who are in the sick bay, the ones that are conscious, because there are a few that aren't, that hear what Nyx is saying are all immediately overcome with fear. Like you feel a deep, intense emotion of fear. Like they're all very scared they're going to die.
So Ash is going to stagger slightly under the weight of that, well, mortal and existential terror. And she's going to try to steel herself. And this would probably be where a kind of complication comes in while she tries to reassure them. But I'd like to undertake a task to try to assure them that this is their best chance of survival. Would that be possible?
Yeah, it's probably a command presence. I'd say the difficulty would be 3, but it's going to be a difficulty. Oh, what
5.
I could get? Yeah, difficulty 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Inspiration focus would apply.
Yeah, absolutely.
So determination and then 2 momentum and 3 threat?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
So before I make that roll, she'll conscious and she will say, so sort of step in front of the captain and say, listen, I know this must be terrifying for you. You feel like you've just been thrown into a situation where you don't have control over your lives anymore. You're at our mercy as we're trying to save you. But you're in good hands, and we're going to do everything in our power. All the technology, all the resources, all the people on board this ship and their collective knowledge are here to do everything we can, and it's at your disposal. We just need your help, one of you, to try to save the lives of all your fellow crewmates.
Uwen leans up. He's barely conscious, and he says, Captain, you may perform your procedure on me. I am responsible for everyone with the captain's death.
Brave man, Uwan. Hopefully this works as well as I think it will. And then I think, so that it's not on anyone's conscience, Nyx will input the command herself to create the full Class N environment.
And what the Class N environment is, it's a much heavier atmospheric pressure. It's basically toxic gases for anyone that breathes like us. So immediately when this happens, the gas fills into the the containment system. He starts coughing. His skin starts to change into a different color. His eyes start to, basically the blood vessels in his eyes start to bleed, and he has difficulty breathing, and it continues to go further and further, and he starts spasming and seizing. And the doctor says, "Captain, your plan is not working. He is in critical condition." But you haven't reached the quite Class Y environment yet.
And again, I think this is why I had Nyx push the button, because if she just killed someone, that's her weight to live with. I say, Doctor, I think we need to get to the full environment here. In order for this potential sacrifice to be worth it, we need to go all the way.
And Jarvik says, "I'm sorry, Captain. I cannot give an order that would create the pain of a sentient being or possibly their death."
Now, out of character, this is a situation where, as captain, he doesn't have to order me to do it, like I'm above him, but he also has the right as the CMO to cancel my command if he feels it's unwarranted. So I guess my question is he implying that he's going to do that, or is he simply saying I cannot condone this action, kind of a thing?
He's saying I can't condone it. He might actually agree with you that you kind of need to do this, but he's saying basically he's not going to take part of it, or he's not going to help you do it, basically.
Okay. Then yeah, Nyx will continue to work the console and test the theory.
As the atmosphere continues, U1 seems to seize even further and, undergo just a terrible set of conditions, as the atmospheric pressure really just crushes his body to a degree. And then, on the information display showing his vitals, it shows that, it flatlines, no vital signs. However, his body dematerializes into a puddle of silver, which slowly starts to look a little more watered down, and gradually, like when he first turned into a silver puddle, it was very shiny and very thick looking, but it eventually begins to thin itself up, just like if you pour a lot of like paint thinner on a paint, what happens is like bubbles form and it becomes to just get more clear and clear, and it's almost like running off the biobed.
So it might be too late for this to interject, but once I see he goes silver blood, could I immediately switch to that class Y to try and save him?
Sure, you could. When you do that, nothing changes though. He is still liquidy, like he still reverted into a silver blood material. And it seems as though whatever is happening to him after that is happening regardless of what environment he's in.
Are there streaks of ice cream within this silver?
No, but there are berries.
Asking the important questions there.
Yeah, the
No.
truly important question.
We have priorities.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So I turn to the doctor and I say, "Well, doctor, theory confirmed, but I fear something else is wrong with them besides them being in a hostile environment."
And Jarvik floats his way over to the corpse of Uwan and with a tricorder begins scanning. And he says, "Captain, I believe despite the creature we knew as Uwan dying, the molecular decohesion continued. I believe what happened, I am not an expert on Silverbloods, but I believe the switch in the environment just killed the Silverblood's ability to hold its form, but I'm not sure that it hastened his death. I believe that was going to happen regardless. I should examine these results. I must admit this condition is beyond my experience."
Well, let's make the most of this sacrifice. What would you recommend for the rest of these patients?
And a rather pale-faced Commander Ash would interject at this point. Captain, we do... and she'll stare at the Silverblood for just a moment. We know that this molecular decohesion seemed to begin when they landed on the planet. It's possible there might be something there that we could investigate, or even if we just ran some sensor scans from orbit, it can't hurt to gather more information.
I point at the console and step aside and let them quite literally run a remote scan from the console.
Jarvik, he says, "Just a moment, Captain. If I may," and he goes over to a computer terminal for himself, and he runs a simulation. "I believe I have an answer, Captain."
Let's hear it.
These entities, their molecular deconstruction would stop if I did a full molecular transfusion on their bodies. It would allow them to retain their form. I can only speculate that an outside factor, led their system into this accelerated degradation. But if I were able to reconstitute them, basically a molecular reconstruction, I believe they would survive at least for a time.
If I understand where you're going with this, Jarvik, you're asking me and the rest of the crew to provide some form of DNA to transfuse them with?
In order for them to exist as they are, they will need their source DNA.
Well, Jarvik, unless you have any objections, I need to make a shipwide announcement for volunteers.
Captain, I don't believe I was very clear. In order for them to exist as they are now, they need their source DNA, as in the creature Pamic. For her to exist, she needs the DNA of the Pamic on the real ship.
I see. So what you're saying is this isn't something where we can get them to take a new form. The only way to save them would be to get the original.
It is possible to force the Silverblood to reconstitute its form. However, it would be an entirely new creature. In order for these creatures to exist as they are now, I can repair their molecular structure, but I will need the source copy. What you propose, taking DNA from someone else, would essentially make them into a copy of that person, and thereby making them into a new being.
So I have the option of either chasing down the Malon, the real Malon, and they were already unwilling to provide assistance. I only barely talked them down to begin with. Or I essentially kill the patient to make a new patient. Not an enviable position. Thoughts, Ash?
I'm sorry, Captain. This is a little bit outside my wheelhouse. If I knew what had actually caused this initial degradation, I might be able to propose some kind of scientific solution, but I'm afraid this moral quandary is one that you're going to have to solve on your own.
What would you do then, Ash, if this was your decision?
She shrugs and says, well, I'd rather die as the person I am than become someone I'm not. If I couldn't find the original me, I probably wouldn't take either option.
Then I think Nyx is going to straighten up a little bit and get super serious and again address the fearful Silverbloods. And I say, we've been able to confirm what we were thinking is the case with your currently deceased or recently deceased comrade. However, I offer a choice. You essentially can live the rest of your lives, short as they are, as the person you are currently. You will die with the memories of the person you are. Or you can essentially become someone completely different. It's likely you will have no memory of this at all. You would become essentially a copy of one of my crew. You would continue living, but as a different person. And though I do not understand the Silverblood biology, this is a choice you're going to have to make for yourselves. I cannot make it for you. And I would ask that anyone who wishes to undergo an experimental procedure to become someone else to please step forward at this time.
A good portion of the Malons are unconscious, like they're not even able to answer you. But Pamic, she kind of pulls herself off of her bed, and she says, "You said that we're a Silverblood. I've heard of these creatures before, but I can't be. You must be confused. I have memories of my childhood, of my children and my husband and my family. You must be mistaken. There must be some some problem. How did this happen?
Again, I'm not 100% familiar with Silverblood physiology, but if what I'm seeing on this data pad is correct, and I sort of motion at a data pad, I've been frantically scrolling through the Voyager logs on the subject. It looks like the Silverbloods are capable of quite literally copying everything down to memories and even that weird freckle on the back of your knee kind of a thing.
Can I approach Pemic?
Sure.
I mean, I'm not going to
And-
stop you.
And I say, this might not bring you much peace, but that means your family's still alive. Your children are safe. Your loved ones are still safe. They still exist. Those memories are real.
And
You
she
may
looks at,
be a copy, but you're real. You are real.
and she looks at you with a slight smile on her face, and she says, "Thank you. Thank you. You are right. If I am a copy, then that means my children will still have their mother. And it's okay if I go." And she looks at you, Nix, and she says, "Captain, I choose to remain who I am, despite my many flaws. I think that's what I was made to be."
And I sort of look around if anyone else, patient-wise, has anything to say. If not, I'm going to say to Mr. Allen, Mr. Allen, as somber as the duty as it is, I believe this would be an appropriate moment for taps.
And just a sad nod towards the captain, and then a quick motion on the computer pad near the door. I slowly walk over there, and that's what happens.
And actually, Alan, your discussion that you had with Pamic, where you brought up that their families are safe, her family is safe because there's a copy. It's not like anyone's being left behind or anything. That seems to have a calming effect on all the rest of the Melons. And actually, Nix, you don't get any volunteers. So they're all kind of resigned to stay who they are.
Then I think what Nyx would do is she would remain in sickbay until the very last of them has expired. She's going to see this through to the end.
And we're actually going to transition to our last scene in the ready room.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Their ship's memory bank would also contain the images of their families, right?
Yeah, what their main computer would, yeah.
So maybe as a way to just give them that lasting image before they go. For as many of them as I can, I tap into their computer with the data pad and pull up images of their family. And some of them might not be still there because of the degradation, but I do my best for as many as I can, and it's probably not that many.
Because I think it would be an interesting close. So some time has passed, and many of the Melons have already died, and Pamic she's not going to be around much longer. And she's sent a call out for you, Telek.
I'll head on down to sickbay.
And when you make your way over to Pamic's bio bed, you can see that she's in a terrible state. Like, her face is beginning to melt. Most of her body looks very translucent. Like she's decomposing into that silver blood material. And she looks up and she says, "I just wanted to say, Commander, that in the short time that I knew you, I found a bit of camaraderie in your presence."
I feel the same, Pamic. It was really great to meet you and to spend what little time we did together.
She takes a deep breath and she says, I really wish that you could have heard Weeva play the flute.
I wish I did too.
And there's a bit of a smile on her face, and her head kind of slowly falls back, and her vital signs go flat also. And she eventually starts to fade away into that silver blood material, and then also starts to turn a little more translucent. In our final scene, we're actually going to jump to the ready room, Nyx. Some time has passed. It's been about a day, I'd say. You guys have held position. And
It looks like Brad has one thing to do real quick.
oh, go ahead, Brad.
It can be after this.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's been about a day since, the last of the Malons have died, and the original Malon vessel, the Bakari, has just left. So after your last transmission, they stayed around for a little bit, but they left. The ion storm has dissipated, and you guys are still close to the Class N planet. You've gotten a final report from the doctor that he thinks what happened was, after he collated the information from Telek, is he thinks probably the original Malon ship landed on the planet and came in contact with the Silverbloods there, and the Silverbloods probably replicated that ship entirely. But that one little radiation leak in the warp core on the Malon ship, the one that was harmless that Telek noticed, his theory is that radiation, when they left the planet, interacted with them and just created this cascade that was just going to kill them.
All right. Well, I prepare a report for Starfleet and get that ready to go.
Alan, can I throw you in the captain's ready room for the final scene?
Sure. Actually, I can involve this is what I want to do. I can involve it in here.
Okay.
So I have a data pad, and I say, Captain.
Can I do for you, Mr. Allen?
I'm feeling a bit sentimental, I guess, about this experience, and here, and I pass a data pad, and I'm asking for approval for a transmission to the Malon ship, and it's the recipe for vanilla ice cream. I think that's something that they'd enjoy, and maybe it's a way that we can all remember these people that we met.
And, serious at first, but then she cracks a smile and says, I believe we can bend the Prime Directive and give them ice cream technology.
And Alan laughs and says, thank you, Captain.
Was there anything else, Mr. Allen?
And he turns to the door and pauses, and then turns back and says, just thank you.
For what?
I'm just happy we were able to give them that final moment. I think if it was up to the Malons, it would have been different. I'm glad we were here for this, as sad as it was.
Well, as they say, you have to know the bad times so you know when the good times come. And I think we have equal members or equal situations here. The important thing is that we learn from this experience.
Yes, sir. And then Alan turns and leaves.
And then as Alan leaves, the doors close. We see Nyx leaning over the computer trying to figure out how to write this report. And then the camera pulls back outside of the window of her ready room to see the Hyperion in orbit around the Class N planet.